of Reva, which is now Mahindra Reva, of course. Chetan, welcome. How are you?
Thanks, Vishal. I'm fine.
What do you think of the budget? I mean, the markets have given it a thumbs up. Before the budget, I wrote a piece on the electric vehicle industry, expecting a lot more. I was a tad disappointed, but you say that there are a lot of allied things to EVs that the industry can benefit from. Over to you, Chetan.
Yeah, I think that overall the budget from a perspective of a country has, where we're coming out post-COVID, had to have a lot of other things. So it's going to be difficult to accommodate every aspect. But we're really hoping that the EV side would have gotten a better push and a better recognition. I would say sometimes it's important just the recognition on this area. Didn't see too much directly in there, but I would say probably there are a few indirect areas that we saw. I think there's an outlay of 18,000 crores to support augmentation of public bus transportation services. I think that's a great welcome announcement, right? Along with this whole deployment of Metro Light and Metro New services on this area, right? For ease of mobility across tier 2 cities and around tier 1 city areas. So I think here what could happen is there can be a lot of electrification within the bus side of it. There can also be a lot of electrification for first mile, last mile, like e-rickshaws, e-autos. And there can be, under the same gamut, probably infrastructure for charging and swapping. So I think there's a larger opportunity of creating public transportation if their budget is there. I hope that some of this could be used to really make a huge impact and help electrification in the country. So look forward to the details around that area. But that could be one aspect that I think could potentially be beneficial.
I like this integrated approach that you talked about. You're perhaps saying that people will take a bike, EV bike to the metro, park it off, maybe go with an EV rider, get off at the metro, take the metro back to work, and again, get onto EV bus or an EV car, taxi, and there's going to be integrated charging and all that with this rupees 18,000 crore bus transportation outlay, right?
Well, I'm hoping that what it is. It's very broad. It's just talked about that the public infrastructure will get this much, I think is great. I think it's important that we don't look at this as one piece of the puzzle, but we look at it as an integrated solution. So I'm hopeful the government in its outlay starts to say that we start to create hubs to enable that. And a large piece of the missing part in our country, in most of our cities, is first mile, last mile. First mile, last mile will enable a larger intent into public transportation. If that's integrated seamlessly, I think we have a great opportunity to leverage this investment.
Okay. And you've been focusing on Make in India for 3 decades now, and you're entering your 4th decade. I mean, you're doing it from high school, right? So I clearly remember that. And I'd like to know this production linked scheme, right? There's an outlay of 1.97 lakh crore for this scheme. How much of it would really support your industry, or do you see this broad theme on across industries? It was an interesting take. She said, okay, this PLI scheme will also create jobs. But from your industry perspective, what do you think would happen?
So I think when industries are at a nascent level, such schemes can be huge, because then they start to transfer right in the beginning. Because then you start to say, do I import or do I develop, right? And so if the scheme has more meat in terms of the details coming out, how will a new entrepreneur getting into making an electric motor or a vehicle or a battery system or a solution get benefited in this area, right? And how easy is it for him to get benefit in the value add on this front? I think if these come out earlier, then I think there will be a huge push can help the country in new jobs, because these are all new jobs to be created by between now and 2030 in the new space. And this could be a great kick. It's good to have it now. It's like we missed the boat on solar energy when, and those cells and everything could have been produced in India. To do this at a time when the industry is going to grow is the right time, because then people are willing to invest if they believe there's an extra benefit they're getting. So the devil is in the details. If it comes out right, I think it can help the country tremendously. And I hope that that vision of what the government has comes out in areas, and automotive is a large portion of it. And I'm sure new energy and electric vehicles need to be, is definitely part of that vision. We need to see how much finally gets allocated to that area.
One of the things that probably the PLI scheme could probably help, and like you said, the devil is in the details, energy storage is so important. And your company focuses on energy storage in a massive way. The hardware is built here, the software is built here. How much of that would you see probably going ahead this year? Would you see a large amount? You're focusing on 100 cities, right? That's what I'm told.
No, we're focusing 25 cities this year.
25 cities, okay. Okay. But will the scheme allow you to scale? I mean, is that something that you have to apply for, or how does it work? I mean, will the outlay be for companies such as yours, startups such as yours?
So I think we're still waiting the details.
Okay.
There's a separate energy storage policy that has come out, which is
Yes.
supporting companies related to setting up a factory, cell manufacturing. And we do the rest of it, right? We don't manufacture the cell, but we take the cell and make it into packs, and then with stations and integrated solutions. So having companies making those in India are also very valuable, which augments the kind of work we're doing. And the net we can bring indigenization. It should. We're making components for the industry, so I do believe that it's a piece of the entire automotive industry. Like I said, we look forward to the details to see how impactful that can be.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed last year, Chetan, was like there were 5, 6 mini budgets last year, many announcements, right? And for many months now, the EV industry has been talking about the GST reduction. And maybe this year the government could address that too for components, right? Some of the key components.
Yeah, I think there's two challenges around the GST, right? One,
Yes.
there's an inverted duty structure where the inputs are higher than the output, which makes it challenging if you're an EV only industry, right? If you had multiple other solutions, you could do it, which means that this credit gets stuck up with you, right? The second part is that the bits of the policy that have come out in the past, but they have not been holistically looked at. So in vehicles were made 5% and chargers were made 5%. You'd expect that batteries were also made 5%. So that, right, because a policy also came out that you could sell batteries and vehicles separately, which meant that if they were together, they would have 5% structure. Where they were separate, they would have 5 and 18%. So you don't want to make something, differentially more expensive, right?
Yes.
Similarly, while charges again are at 5% and vehicles are at 5%, if you were to get a service-related charging or swapping, you'd pay 18%. Now, here's a rickshaw driver who's trying to go electric, and you're charging him 18% GST for going green. So it's not the intention, I think. The vision is right there. It's that these anomalies have to be fixed to really accelerate the industry. And I know the budget doesn't talk about GSTs in general. They're coming from a different area. But the guideline has to come through that, listen, we will, the budget will work towards working to make these anomalies fixed so that the industry can really grow. And that larger vision thing was pending, but I hope this is taken up seriously by the government and we see some action on that.
Okay, lovely. The other thing that I think the EV industry will go forward and capture in a big way is that voluntary vehicle scrappage policy. I thought that was interesting because they said 15 years for vehicles used in the corporate or commercial side and 20 years personal side, right? You could voluntarily go and scrap it.
Yeah.
My whole deal is the narrative around this, right? If the government really allows people, gives them an incentive to give off their older cars, I think EVs are a great bet. I think this could allow people to actually go green. Right? There should be some platform built around this, correct?
Yeah, I think one area, if the vehicle incentive, the scrapping policy is linked to the product you get. For example, if you got a regular vehicle, it's still better, right? But if you got electric, it's even better, right? So because so therefore, could you also get a benefit that's differential based on what you got? I think if that comes up, then that could be an added advantage for a person to switch to electric. So a lot of countries have done that when they've created scrapping policies is based on electrification. Others, they give a much better benefit. So I think the details that come out, there's also conversation a few days ago about a green tax being implemented.
Yes.
I don't know how these two link. We're still waiting for the details. Good opportunity to make the country realize to go green, both from a spirit, but also if the money is there to allow it. We can see that. And we need to see some sort of an incentive mechanism within the cities and states to push that. I think if state governments and others say, oh, okay, if the center is giving you this and we need to get them off our roads because that's where the pollution is, we'll give you something extra. That could really take it on. So I think that's an area of huge opportunity to shift the kind of technology we have on our roads much quicker.
Okay,
it's interesting. Electric.
That's well said. That's really well said. I have a point there and I want you to touch upon it. India had already hit 1 million cars by 2005 in yearly sales. And if you look at this vehicle scrappage policy, you'll need industries to come up to scrap these vehicles because the first set of these 1 million vehicles sold in 2004-5 will come back to scrap in 2024 or 25.
Yeah.
Do you think that, again, the details should address some kind of entrepreneurship here? It's the same thing about the mobile phone recycling, right?
Yeah.
So many businesses came around it, but they did not take off. In the West, there is a streamlined system. You can go scrap a car at any given point of time. What are the incentive mechanisms for entrepreneurs, if at all the government should take this more seriously in the details?
Yeah, I think fortunately in India, there is huge value still, right? I mean, something weighing a ton is still a steel and everything else. It still has value in India. And if someone can pick bottles and newspapers and make money, and you give someone 1 ton of metal, you can make a lot more money on it. So I do believe that it should be done in a structured level, in a way that's sustainable. So there are minimized emissions around the process and done in a proper manner. I think that sometimes adds some cost, but it's something that should be pushed so that we have the right philosophy, and it's easy to do it. So when a dealer is coming, it takes it. The process of recycling is much easier. In the case, for example, if you remember many years ago on lead acid batteries, dealer had to take responsibility. He had to take the old battery, give you the new one. He gave you an amount of money. The transaction was done right then and there, and then he had a process to transfer on this front. So if we bring in a structured way where the ecosystem players can be part of that, and they all benefit a little bit, then I think something like this could really be meaningful and sustainable.
Okay, you know what is even more strange in a sense? The government she started talking about air pollution in the beginning. You remember?
Yeah.
And strangely enough, I hope all these link back to these kind of things that we are talking about.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there's a smart city program. There's air pollution. There are a bunch of things. They should link, and if under those gamuts, certain amounts could be given for electric mobility as part of one of the key, areas that can support city center, then that would be very positive too.
Okay. My final question to you is, there was focus on job creation, and for all the gig workers, they wanted to create a platform. I see an increased trend of green vehicles in the gig economy workers, side of things. These delivery boys, food delivery boys, the food tech companies are saying that go electric. What can be addressed there? Perhaps if the government addresses these details of go green, right? What do you see come out from the gig economy? Will they be pushed to use greener vehicles? Perhaps you could throw the numbers also. I think an average two-wheeler guy travels for 12 hours a day, perhaps working, that's a lot of gas burnt in a day, right? So why does the EV make sense? If you could tell us, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. I think EVs start to make sense when you use a lot, right? And so therefore, as you start in scooters crossing 60, 70 kilometers a day, three-wheelers crossing 100, it starts to make sense, right? Newer business models like battery swap make even more sense because the purchase price is cheaper and your cost per kilometer is less. And you drive more, you don't have any challenges around that. So this makes even more sense in terms of there's no range limitation on this area, right? Plus, these vehicles being used so much more need less service. So electrics typically need 40% of the service on this area. You still have your tires and stuff like that, but you don't have the oil changes and air filter changes, spark plugs and stuff, right? So when someone is using it a lot, the maintenance comes down tremendously on this front, and the uptime also on this area. So it's a natural area. Also, a lot of stop and go. They keep delivering packages, right? Sometimes in the neighborhood, stop and go is the worst thing for regular vehicles because they're highly inefficient and even more polluting. And the engines get damaged much quicker because you're stopping and going so much on this area. So for all these reasons, electrics makes perfect sense, right? I think creating a lot of the e-commerce players are understanding this makes sense, and they made big bets to say we'd like to do it. But finally, they don't own vehicles. It's the average person who owns a vehicle gets attached to their platform. So if we create incentive mechanisms for them as part of this, we think it can really benefit them, and give them a little bit more revenue. At the same time, make them go sustainable and create an impact. So I hope that as part of the entire process, benefits coming across this could also come through.
Yeah, I hope they address it for the gig economy workers very seriously, and because they're constantly traveling, it's better for their health too in many ways, right? And my teams just sent me a message saying that because you're a man of R&D and science, the government's announced a 50,000 crore outlay for R&D. They don't again give out the details. Again, without looking much into it, what would you require? Do these do these monies outlaid, right? Do you want it to come to startups in a streamlined manner, or is it something that's going to be bureaucratic where you have to apply and then wait for it, or what would you advise? I mean, how should the government handle it?
I think this is an area where we have to learn from some of the West, right? Where things have been implemented very quickly. The process has to be fast, right? I mean, it should almost say that if you have 50,000, you've got to make sure in the end of the year there is zero, and you've got to deploy this, right? And there needs to be a mechanism. And granted, some will not work out, but that's the thing about R&D, right? Even if 30-40% work out, the benefit could be 10 times that amount and more than make up for some of the ones that haven't worked out. The challenge is we always see what doesn't work out, and you're always in that mode versus saying, okay, we got to take 20 bets, and maybe 8 will work out, and 4 maybe so, and some won't. That's R&D. So the mechanism, I think, has to be much simpler that people can access. I think it should be across gamuts. It should be across areas where startups can access. It should be across incubation centers across each part of the country where we work with local people to get capabilities where startups could go to and create this ecosystem on this area. And I think with larger companies, if they're giving equivalent funds, they should match it and says, okay, we'll work with you to do projects that are larger. So we do it at different levels and scale and focused, not huge committees, huge amount of time. We need to be there, but we need to find better processes, I think, in this area.
Do you think they can link it to universities and to companies such as yours? Because I've seen your R&D, it's pretty hardcore. Would you like that, to link it like the way we do doctors to MBBS schools and hospitals?
Yes, I think I think there's not one model. Should be one of the many mechanisms. It should be multiple areas. But I think there's a lot of today, if you think of what we're doing on, in any field, in biotech, everything, all this R&D is actually happening in companies. Imagine if you could augment the R&D happening in companies with other funds, right? It is finally going to help, especially if it's in the area of medical sciences, the area of sustainable mobility. These are important for the country, right? So I'm not saying go everywhere else, but go in areas that are 5-6 areas that are critical, from education to other aspects and mobility and stuff, and put the required money, and let's see how that works out. And great opportunity that this much has been put across. It's the devil in the details.
Yes. Chetan, okay, we're running out of time, but if we summarize this budget, is this money putting money back in the hands of the people so that they could go buy their EVs or also go buy Make in India products? And you said you've got 4 or 5 asks. You want to quickly summarize before we say goodbye?
Well, I think the past for this hasn't, the FAME part hadn't worked out well, right? It only got 10,000 vehicles, 3-wheelers, and 30,000 2-wheelers against a target of 500,000, 1 million.
Yes.
So there's a lot of gap between what's already available in there. So I think one key thing is such policies that already exist should also be cleaned up to enable deployment on this front. I believe that if the PLI scheme we talked about details out, can make a huge impact on the industry. And I think the overall transportation budget we've talked about in public transportation, if that can be linked to electric mobility, we can probably help. We can help them a lot on that area. So there are some pluses. We're hopeful the details get worked out, and we see a more positive impact for people.
And we will be coming back to you with a deeper analysis later on this month. We'll be bringing Chetan back to discuss the devil in the details, like he puts it. And Chetan, it was always a pleasure to bring you. It's always a pleasure to bring you here. And hopefully we have some more details soon from the government. Thank you.